My name's Andy Holmes, I'm an author, and today I'm going to teach you my 4 steps to write a killer short story. Short stories are great, especially when you're first starting out, because you can experiment and toy around with things and sharpen specific skills. You can also finish things, which is really important. Most new writers, and I was the same way, when they first start out, they want to write a novel. They want to write a breakout novel. But here's just the hard truth. You don't really have the skills necessary to write a full-length novel when you're just starting out. And I learned that the hard way. So you need to start out writing tons of short stories where you can practice specific skills like dialogue, setting, and narrative, and plot twists. And you can learn these things in writing lots and lots of short stories. One thing with short stories too is if you don't like it, you can just move on to the next thing, or you can finish it and then move on to the next thing. You're not going to put 6 months of work into like a novel and then go, oh, I don't like this, then have to put it away. That's not going to happen to you if you're writing short stories in the beginning and trying to find your voice. Okay, so step 1 to writing a killer short story is to come up with an idea. I have a few ways of coming up with ideas for short stories. I like to think of like the end of a play or a performance with the curtain closing, or the final chapters of books. I think good short stories could act as the final chapters of books or the closing scenes of movies and stuff like that. So I like to think of like a satisfying ending and then work my way towards that. And part of why I like to start with the ending is because I don't have time to really develop an entire story arc, giant character arcs, or big sweeping world building stories. You need to just focus on singular events. And the way I like to do that, the way I like to control it, make it concise, is come up with a good ending or some idea or concept of like a curtain close, and then figure out how I'm going to get there in a very short sequence. Like, how am I going to get there in 5 to 6 scenes, 7 maximum. You don't want it to get out of control, otherwise you start writing a novel. So step 1 is to come up with an idea, and I can do a whole video about coming up with ideas just on that subject alone. But for right now, the real basic thing is to just think of a curtain close, think of the last chapters of some of your favorite books, and then try to figure out how that could work. Just that singular satisfying event could work as a short story. So I've had this idea of writing a space story about a pilot, about a jet pilot or an astronaut having to go up into space to save humanity. And the idea I had on this was something's wrong with the sun, and then he's got to reboot or restart the sun, like jumpstart like a car. I'm going to show you how I take that idea and go from step 1 all the way through the end to having a story. So step 2 is to write a brain dump, do a brainstorm. I used to hate these in school. It's when you make the little bubbles and they'll draw the lines and squiggles and you just kind of brainstorm on a piece of paper. I don't know, I never saw the point of it in school when I did them. But now as a professional writer, professional author, this is actually my favorite tool. This is one of my most valuable tools that I use to kind of collect my thoughts and get everything out of my head onto a piece of paper so I can see it. So now we're going to rapidly do one for this story. I'm going to show you how I do it. So, okay, good. On this step, there's no real rules. The important thing is to take everything out of your head and dump it onto this brainstorm so you can see it all in one place. And then you can organize all your thoughts in the outline later. But just write everything down. So we'll start out with our central idea, which is a space story. Okay, and then I decided that I wanted to write this in first person. And the reason why I wanted to write this in first person is I really want you to get into the astronaut's head. Alright, so then we need to also, I want to develop this character a little bit. I want him to be like a tragic hero, and I want him to be extremely likable. Good. So how am I going to make him tragic? Well, some of my ideas I had is that he could have like a wife, and they may have lost a baby, or he has a dad, and his dad just died. I like to add little losses into my characters, because then the reader can identify with those losses and sympathize with the character. So we're going to weave these elements into the story somehow. Okay, so the other question is, why is he going to be a hero? Like, why is he going into space? And I thought about this a little bit, because there's a few reasons. I don't want him going into space just on like a random Apollo mission. There needs to be like really high stakes. Like there needs to be a big reason why he's going into space. Like everyone's gonna die or something like that. Really high stakes. So I don't know. What are the typical reasons why someone would have to do that? Like an asteroid going to hit Earth. But we've seen that. I don't know, but I have to put my own spin on it somehow. The actual idea I really liked was the sun. I think I mentioned this. The sun dying. It has to get rebooted. Now I'll just make a note here. In order for me to make this realistic, I'm gonna have to do research. You know, I'm sure I could research stars dying online. There's probably tons of information on that. So I need to research stars dying, and I'll probably come up with a lot of ideas for the story based on this research, because I'll see, you know, what all the theories are about it. The other thing I had in mind was structure. So like the story structure, do I want this to be like just all linear, just like from start to end, or do I want it to jump around, right? And I actually had this idea of having it jump around. So I want it to be like a story where he's in space on the mission. So there's a space mission, then there's a flashback, and then back into the space mission, and then we have a flashback. And we kind of go back and forth until the very end of the story. And my idea for the ending, you know, the way I wanted to start it, okay, because if I use this sun dying thing, I had a cool metaphor in mind where like the opening scenes, the earth goes dark, right? Everything goes dark, everything goes black. Another cool thing about this is if the earth does go black, like the sun winks out, you wouldn't be able to see the moon anymore. The moon is gone because, you know, you can only see the moon because of the sun's reflection off of it. And then I wanted to end the story with the sun starting up again. See that? So then we have this metaphor of everything going dark and everything lighting up again in the end. So what themes can I work into that? Well, you know, you have a hope theme, redemption. Good. So if we're gonna have a hope theme and we're gonna have redemption, that means he has to lose hope. Our astronaut has to lose hope. So he's gonna lose hope through these tragedies, and then he's gonna redeem himself through here. So we have to get here. Okay, other things I need to work out are like the crew, like how many crew, let's say 4 or 5. I don't want it to be too big. And then I need to like add basically little plot points where, you know, there's points of stress on their mission. So certain scenes, you know, the other thing I'll do is I'll write scene ideas. I'll write scene ideas in this thing, or I'll write lines of dialogue that I come up with. But like some of the scenes I want to write in this are like the space launch, you know, turmoil on the ship, death of crew. I want some of the crew members to die to increase the stakes, you know, and I really like the earth dark and the earth bright. Okay, so there you go. I mean, you could do this forever, honestly. I just want to quickly show you how I kind of do it. There's no real organization to it. Sometimes I'll take a bigger poster board if it's a larger idea, and I'll just do this for hours. Sometimes if I'm going to write a novel, I'll actually take a big piece of poster board on my kitchen table, and I'll just do this for like 4 or 5 hours before I ever start writing anything, just to get it all down. Step 3 is to write an outline. You need an outline. You don't have to outline everything you write, but like for me, I kind of shy away from outlines, but I need them when I write short stories, because if I don't have an outline, the story gets out of control and I tend to just overwrite and write and write and write and write, and I can't end the thing. It's important to have an outline with a short story because you want to just you have to write very concisely. You have a very limited amount of space to get the story started and finished. And to contain it within that space, you've got to have an outline so you don't go off into these different tangents. Different when you're writing a novel. When you're writing a novel, you can go write 500 pages of whatever you want. Short story, you can't do that. You got to start it and stop it. So the way I write outlines is I take my brain dump that we did in step 2 and I put it down, and I take a piece of paper or a notebook or whatever, and I put it right next to the brain dump, and I just start writing out the scenes that I want to get to my ending. So let me show you how to do that right now. Okay, so now we're going to outline. So like I said, I usually put this right here, and I have my paper right here, and we're going to outline the story. And what we're going to do is pull from this to write our scenes. So here's my outline. I want to start with a hook and a launch sequence, and then right after that, we're going to do a flashback to the Earth going dark. So like I said in this before, I want to do like a scene from the actual space mission that's happening in present time, and then do a flashback, and then a space mission, and then a flashback from our main character's personal life. So you're kind of seeing how he got to this point. That's the point of this. That's how the story is going to go. And I want to have a scene of them actually in space. So in space, you know, the classic scene with the crew. So the crew dining, you know, maybe some philosophy of life, or so give them some perspective of what they're doing and like how big the stakes are right there. Then we're gonna have another flashback, okay? And then I want this to be more of like backstory, so like flashback backstory on what happened to the son. So this scene could maybe be like a briefing or like some kind of exposition, like an interesting way where I can kind of explain what's happening earlier, like why are they on this mission, what are they going to be doing. So that's not actually going to get explained till later, because that hooks the attention in of the reader to keep reading to find that out. So I'm going to plant some mystery around that. Like they're not going to know, the reader's not going to know what they're doing or why they're doing it early on, and it gets explained later. That's just a little trick to kind of keep your reader going. Don't show all your cards right at the beginning. Okay, so this is a short story. This could very easily stretch out into a novel, so I've got to like pick and choose my events and sequences here. So the next thing is I want disaster. I want some kind of accident to happen in space, which like is catastrophic to the mission. And one of my ideas on this is the big twist is a crew member is like a religious fanatic, right? Like believes in like the rapture or like the end of days or something like that, and thinks that they're screwing around with like the natural order of things. So he's blowing up the ship or causes some kind of disaster. Okay, then the other thing I'm going to do is at the end of this disaster scene right here, I'm going to end it in a cliffhanger. Okay, you're not going to get a resolution to the disaster. I'm going to cut it short, and then we're going to go to a flashback. And that's also going to hold the reader's attention, so he has to keep reading. And this flashback, we need to start adding the tragedy. Okay, so maybe he has a miscarriage, his baby miscarriages, or I wanted his father to die. So then there's like some tragedy to the character, and these tragedies are what propel him to go on this mission. The next scene was we're back in space, and I had this idea of after this disaster that happens earlier, here people start dying, right? And there's only 2 of the crew members left. Maybe they've killed off the villain, and they only have enough oxygen for one of them to get to the sun. So then I thought of writing a gut-wrenching scene where, you know, they have to decide somehow how one of them's going to die. One of them has to die. One of them has to commit suicide so the other one can go on and continue the mission. So obviously our hero who's telling us this story in the first person is going to be the survivor, but I want to come with some controversial way that he continues. Okay, cool. Now, I want to do one more flashback scene here. And this has to sprinkle the seeds of the arc, because this is a very short arc. So this flashback has to have something like along the lines of hope or redemption or some light at the end of the tunnel, because it's all been kind of dark, right? That's been the main theme. Everything is dark. Earth goes dark. His dad dies. He has a miscarriage. There's a horrible accident. Everything's getting darker and darker and darker. And then the sun lighting up at the end is going to be a metaphor for everything getting brighter and hopeful for him. So I need some kind of stage set for that, for the light at the end of the tunnel. So on the flashback, maybe something happy. I had a couple ideas about this. Was maybe his wife is pregnant, you know, after the miscarriage, and doesn't tell him. Doesn't tell him because she doesn't want him to worry while he's on the mission. Back into space. Now here we have our climax. And then he has the final push, gets to the sun, and pulls it off. And then after he pulls it off, you know, we have your ending scene where where the Earth lights back up. And then you could tie this into the pregnancy somehow. You know, maybe that reveal comes at the end. I don't know. And then the other thing I haven't worked out yet is why the sun has gone out. That's also going to be a big mystery. Did the aliens put it out? Whatever. There's going to be some science behind that. So this is one of those stories, honestly, where I have like the curtain closed, where like the Earth lights back up, but I haven't worked out fully how to get there. And this section right here is a bit vague to me, and that's okay. And that's going to happen to you a lot, because this section right here of the story is very rarely very clear to me when I start out. You know, sometimes I'll have it outlined, but almost, even if I do have it outlined and figured out, I almost always change it when I get to it. So I like to write to about here. And then sometimes what I'll do is I'll brainstorm again. I'll do another one of these brainstorms for the last section, and then I'll outline the last section. Or if I can kind of just see it, I'll just write through it. But there you go. There's my basic outline, and I use this to actually write the story. And step four is to write it. And the way I write the short story is I put my computer, the way I do it is I put my computer there. On the left of the computer, I put the brain dump. On the right to the computer, I put the outline. And I look at the outline, and I don't think. I just write as fast as I possibly can. The faster I write, the higher quality the writing seems to be. I don't worry about editing. I don't worry about grammar, punctuation, any of that. Because when you're doing this stage, You just want to get the story down as fast as possible. Otherwise, you could just painfully be sitting there like deciding whether to use a comma or semicolon for hours. In this step of writing, my best advice to you is just to get the story down. Don't worry about how bad some of the syntax or language is. You can just go back and edit that later. No one's going to see this until you're ready to show it to them. So step 4 is just to write the story. When you're first starting out, all of these steps might seem like a bit difficult to you. It might seem a bit meticulous, but the more and more you do these things, the easier and easier and easier it gets. You're going to get to the point where doing brain dumps, outlines, and writing are actually so second nature that you might be able to pack it all away and just do the writing. Sometimes I can do that if I really have the story worked out, but all of these steps I've found really help me get the stories done faster. The stories are also tend to be higher quality when I use all these steps, because then I don't leave things out that I thought of while I was like doing the dishes or something, like, oh, that would be a great idea. And if I don't actually put that in the outline, I might leave it out when I actually write it. Good, so now I need to write this story, so check back in a couple of days. We'll have it finished and I'll post it as a video, as a free audiobook, and you can see it there. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm going to be posting more writing tutorials and more of my work for free. If you want to check out more of my work, head on over to www.andywritesstories.com, and I'll see you next time.